My name is Eleanor Vance, but the world knows me as Evie Black, the investigative journalist who exposed the corruption and the chaotic pharmaceutical scandal of 2024, people say. I have a nose for lies, a talent for spotting the cracks in a perfect facade. I learned that skill young. I learned it in the halls of Blackwood Manor, watching my twin brother, Julian. We were 18 when my life ended, or rather, when my old life was murdered. Julian and I were twins, but mirrored reflections. I was the athlete, the debater, the one who craved truth. Julian was something else, charming, beautiful, and utterly hollow inside. My parents, Richard and Catherine, adored him. They saw him as the heir to the Vance dynasty, a fragile genius who needed protection. They saw me as the spare, the rough draft. The favoritism wasn't just about extra dessert. It was systemic. If Julian broke a vase, I was clumsy. If Julian failed a test, I was distracting him. But the real darkness began during our senior year. Julian had developed a gambling habit, poker, online betting, shady debts. I found his ledger. I confronted him in the library during a stormy November night. "I'll tell them, Julian," I warned, holding the leather notebook. "You're stealing from Dad's study to pay sharks." Julian didn't panic. He smiled, a cold, reptile smile that still haunts my nightmares. "Go ahead, Elle. Let's see who they believe." 2 days later, the incident happened. I woke up to screaming. Police lights flashed through my window. I rushed downstairs to find the living room destroyed. The safe was open, empty, and there was Julian lying on the floor, his face bloody and gasping for air. She had a crowbar. Julian sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me as the officers entered. I caught her stealing the bonds. She went crazy. It was a masterclass in performance. He had bruised himself, staged the break-in, and hidden the money in my car trunk where the police inevitably found it. My parents didn't even ask for my side. My father looked at me with a disgust that severed our bloodline instantly. "You're a monster," he spat. They didn't press charges only to avoid a public scandal. Instead, they exiled me. Within an hour, I was on the street with a single suitcase. My grandmother, Nana Rose, was the only one who took me in. As I drove away, I saw Julian watching from the window. He wasn't crying anymore. He was counting. 10 years. That's how long silence feels. In that decade, I rebuilt myself from ash. Nana Rose passed away 3 years ago, leaving me her modest cottage and, more importantly, her files. You see, Nana Rose kept records of everything. She suspected Julian long before I did. My career skyrocketed. I was no longer the accused thief. I was a respected voice in media. My parents, on the other hand, had vanished into obscurity. Until last Tuesday. It started with a call from an unknown number. "Eleanor?" The voice was frail, trembling. It was my mother, Catherine. We saw you on the news. You look so successful." I didn't hang up. The investigative instinct kicked in. "Why now? What do you want, Catherine?" I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. "It's the house," my father's voice chimed in from the background, sounding desperate. "The foundations are rotting. We need renovations. We're retired. The pension isn't enough. We thought since your family..." Family! The word tasted like poison. But something didn't add up. The Vance estate was worth millions. They shouldn't be broke. Unless... "I'll consider it," I lied. "But I need to see the house first, to assess the damage." I drove back to the place of my nightmares. The manor looked decrepit, the gardens overgrown, but when I entered, I noticed details a civilian would miss. Expensive cigars in the ashtray, a new high-end security system on the interior doors, and Julian. He walked in wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He hadn't aged well. His eyes were frantic, darting around the room. "Look who crawled back," he sneered, though his hands shook as he poured a drink. My parents sat me down and gave me the sob story. They needed $200,000 for repairs. If I gave it, they hinted, I might be welcomed back into the will. I agreed to think about it and asked to use the restroom. Instead, I slipped into my father's study. My heart pounded. I had 5 minutes. I installed a digital bug under the desk and snapped photos of the documents. Lying on the chaotic surface. Bank notices. Foreclosure warnings. But then I found a letter tucked inside a book. It wasn't from a bank. It was from a private lender, a loan shark syndicate known for breaking legs, and the debt was under Julian's name, co-signed by my parents. The twist hit me hard. They weren't broke because of retirement. They were being bled dry. Julian hadn't just framed me. He had spent the last decade parasitizing them. But why did they let him? Why was my proud father terrified of his own son? I drove to a nearby motel and put on my headphones, activating the bug I planted. The audio crackled to life. "She knows, Richard." Julian's voice screamed through the feed. "She has that look. If she digs into the 2014 accounts, we are all dead." "We protected you," my mother wailed. "We lied to the police for you about the assault. We disowned our daughter for you, and you gambled it all away." "You didn't lie for me, Mother," Julian laughed, a dark, manic sound. "You lied because if the police investigated the theft too closely, they would have found your offshore laundering scheme. We are in this together. Mutually assured destruction." I froze. The realization washed over me like ice water. My parents hadn't just believed Julian because he was the favorite. They believed him and exiled me because I was the only one honest enough to accidentally expose their own financial crimes. Julian knew their secret. He had been blackmailing them for 10 years. The temptation to just walk away was strong. They deserved each other, a nest of vipers eating their own tails. But I needed closure. I needed justice for the 18-year-old girl who cried herself to sleep on Nana Rose's couch. I called them the next morning. "I have the money," I told my father, "but I won't do a transfer. I want a family dinner. Tonight, I'll bring a cashier's check. But Julian has to be there and you have to apologize. Not privately. I want you to say the words in front of him." They agreed instantly, their greed blinding them to the trap. That evening, the dining room was dimly lit. The air was thick with tension. I placed an envelope on the table, Julian's eyes glued to it like a starving wolf. "So," Julian smirked, reaching for the wine. "The prodigal sister returns to save the day." "Apologize first," I said calmly. My father cleared his throat. "Eleanor, we are sorry. We reacted harshly back then. It was a stressful time." "Tell the truth, Richard," I said, my voice hardening. "What truth?" my mother asked, nervous sweat glistening on her forehead. I pulled out my tablet and placed it on the table. I pressed play. Julian's voice from the recording filled the room. "You lied because they would have found your offshore laundering scheme?" The silence was deafening. Julian dropped his glass. It shattered, red wine staining the expensive carpet like blood. My father turned pale as a ghost. "You recorded us?" my mother whispered. "That's illegal. Actually, one-party consent laws apply here." I lied smoothly, or maybe not. "They didn't know, but tax evasion and filing false police reports? That's definitely illegal. And Julian, insurance fraud from the burglary? That's a felony." I stood up. "The envelope doesn't contain a check. It contains a copy of the dossier I've compiled. The original has already been sent to the IRS and the district attorney's office. It's scheduled to be opened in exactly 1 hour unless I send a code to stop it." "You wouldn't," Julian snarled, lunging across the table. I didn't flinch. I sidestepped, and he crashed into the chair. "I would. And I have. But here is my offer. I won't stop the IRS investigation. You deserve prison for the laundering. But I might hold back the evidence of the false police report regarding my assault. If you sign a confession right now, admitting Julian staged the robbery, admitting I was innocent, I want my name cleared. If we sign, we go to jail anyway for the taxes." My father shouted. "Yes," I smiled, picking up my purse. "But if you sign, at least the world will know you're just greedy criminals, not monsters who framed their own child. It's the only scrap of dignity you have left." They signed. Hand trembling, tears streaming, they signed the confession. Julian tried to run, but I had already called the police regarding the active threats he made on the tape. Sirens were already wailing in the distance, a beautiful echo of the night. I was kicked out. I walked out of Blackwood Manor for the last time. I didn't look back at the flashing lights. I drove to Nana Rose's grave, placed the confession letter on the soil, and finally, after 10 years, I took a deep breath. The debt was paid.